Girl is lying unconscious on the street. A man in ancient attire hurriedly runs over to check. He presses the woman's wrist, then pulls out a needle, preparing to help. At this moment, an ambulance arrives just in time. The paramedic asks if he's a family member of the woman. Hyo-lim is puzzled, not understanding what family member means. He nods, resulting in being taken into the ambulance with her. In his first car ride ever, Hyo-lim is terrified nearly to death. This horseless carriage runs terrifyingly fast. In fact, 500 years ago, he was the most renowned physician. Everyone in Korea knew him. Whatever the ailment was, with some simple wrist press, he could learn how the bloodstream was circulating in organs. Just a needle and he could hit the exact acupuncture point. He never prescribed medicine to his patients. No matter how serious the disease was, they would immediately recover and even walk normally again. The terminal illness was diagnosed by other physicians. In Hyo-lim's eyes, it was nothing serious. He was hailed as the #1 acupuncturist in the world. However, he also had an unwritten rule. When it's just time to get off work, no matter how severe the illness was, as soon as the bell rang, he wouldn't continue his work because he had another job, which was to solve difficult secrets for the high-ranking officials at night. OMG, this job had brought him a large amount of gold. Not only that, after work, he could drink with courtesans, experiencing all the luxuries life had to offer. As a saying, people fear to be famous, pigs fear to get fat. Hyo-lim's medical skills quickly spread to the royal palace. That day, a high-ranking official sought out Hyo-lim to cure the king's headache. If successful, he would be promoted. However, if any mistake occurred, there would only be death as consequence awaiting for them. Hyo-lim made a decision, thinking he could turn a bicycle into a motorcycle. He confidently entered the palace. From afar, he could diagnose all the king's diseases. The treatment process immediately appeared in his mind. This time it was for sure. Hyo-lim skillfully took out the needle, but as he prepared to insert it, the needle trembled uncontrollably. Hyo-lim broke out in a cold sweat. Trembling, he calmly tried again. However, the needle continued to shake violently. Seeing his bizarre behavior, the emperor accused Hyo-lim of attempting to assassinate him and threw him into prison. While being escorted to the prison, Hyo-lim seized the opportunity to flee, but he was quickly surrounded by guards on the bridge. Right then, a man in black from afar shot an arrow at Hyo-lim. Before he could utter final word, another arrow struck him, sending him plunging into the river. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in a time 500 years later. Not only had arrows on his body disappeared, but the wounds had also healed. Seeing strangers casting curious glances at him, Hyo-lim was terrified. He wandered dazedly through the streets. Suddenly, he spotted Choi Yun-kyung lying unconscious. Terrifyingly, all the way, he finally reached the hospital. As soon as getting out of the car, Hyo-lim vomited. He cautiously walked into the hospital. It's hot outside, but it's cold in here. Suddenly, cold gusts of wind blew in. He looked up to see. What in the world was this? He pushed aside all worries to enjoy this refreshing breeze. The doctor asked if he was Choi Yun-kyung's boyfriend. Hyo-lim pondered what boyfriend meant. Was it referring to the male gender informally? So, he nodded and replied clearly that he was indeed that lady's boyfriend. Next, he saw an escalator. So Hyo-lim stood up, sat down, ran and jumped around like a lunatic. Struggling with the trash can, Hyo-lim pulled out a cup from it, drinking from one cup to another. Soon after, Choi Yun-kyung woke up. She questioned Hyo-lim why he claimed to be her boyfriend. Suddenly, Hyo-lim's stomach growled loudly. He hadn't eaten anything in 500 years. Choi Yun-kyung kindly bought him some food. Hyo-lim looked at the food in front of him. Skeptically, he picked up a fork, glancing around at others using it. He put a piece of beef in his mouth. Never before had he tasted anything so delicious. Then he tried the kimchi. Looking up, he noticed a girl staring at him intently. Hyo-lim initially thought this girl was trying to steal his food, but when he saw the look in her eyes, he softened. He offered the girl the fork. Let's eat together. He had no idea that his action would lead to a major mistake. Choi Yun-kyung saw the girl's post and angrily came to find her. Hare pushed Yun-kyung's hand. After finishing the meal, she didn't forget to greet Hyo-lim. Today was supposed to be surgery day, but now it's over. This infuriated Yun-kyung. Hyo-lim recalled accidentally touching Hare's wrist earlier. Her heart truly had issues. He realized the serious mistake he had made. What punishment awaits him for this offense? Will he be beaten, imprisoned, or executed? Yun-kyung said he was truly insane. Hyo-lim still chased after her. Unexpectedly, he patiently followed her all the way to the women's restroom. While Hyo-lim looked at Yun-kyung's grim face, in a moment, he gently pulled her hand back without saying a word and checked her pulse. Unexpectedly, Yun-kyung wrestled his hand back. Then, he was being thrown out by security. At this moment, Hare was coming out and saw Hyo-lim. Hyo-lim said he was a time traveler from ancient times to here. Moreover, he was a renowned physician. Yun-kyung witnessed this scene from upstairs. Hare also saw Yun-kyung. Seeing Hyo-lim and Yun-kyung greeting each other, she intentionally pushed the wheelchair down the stairs. Fortunately, Hyo-lim reacted quickly, using his body to hold her. Hare did all this because she knew her condition was currently very bad. She didn't want to involve her family any further. Then she purposely took Hyo-lim's needle box, provoking him to chase after her. But she had congenital heart disease, so she couldn't exert herself. Not long after, Hare's face turned pale, and she fainted. Hyo-lim rushed to her and kept calling for help. Noticing Hare's breath was getting weaker, Hyo-lim had no choice but to treat her himself. Through checking her pulse, he found her heart had stopped, so he prepared the needle for acupuncture. He inserted the needle into her fingertips, then piercing the acupuncture point on her wrist. Next, he removed the needle and replaced it with another, lifting her up and inserting it into the acupuncture point on her head, continuing to rotate it. At this moment, Dr. Yun-kyung, the surgeon, rushed over. After examining her, she found Hare's body very weak. Hyo-lim thought he would be thanked by Yun-kyung, but what greeted him was a slap. Does your head have a problem? Why did you run around with her like that? Is this modern people's way of expressing gratitude. Hyo-im was thrown out by the security again and given a handcuff for threatening behavior. Seeing the iron frame, Hyo-im realized he had just crawled into a prison with a big sign on the wall saying highly skilled police. Police asked for Hyo-im's ID, but he was so absent-minded that he grabbed the police officer's hands. This made the police officer terrified, leading him straight to the detention room. Hyo-im thought he would be beheaded or something. He had to quickly escape from here. He suddenly remembered when he was first caught here. He accidentally touched the police officer's wrist, so he quickly jumped up and shouted, "Sorry, you must be very tired last night." So the two went into a small room. Hyo-im took out the needles and began the treatment process. Unfortunately, this scene was witnessed by Yeon-kyung, creating a very awkward atmosphere. Yeon-kyung discovered bloodstains on Ha-rae's fingers. After checking the electrocardiogram, she realized Ha-rae's heart had stopped beating for a few minutes. This made Yeon-kyung extremely suspicious, as there were no medical devices involved. She rushed to the surveillance room to review the footage. She saw the entire process of Hyo-im treating Ha-rae, so she went to the police to bail out Hyo-im. The police officer told Yeon-kyung that Hyo-im not only had no ID, but his fingerprint check also revealed no information. Seeing the man in ancient attire, Yeon-kyung was skeptical and didn't want to believe he was a doctor. 10 acupuncture points on the fingertips, helping to circulate blood flow. How did he know that? Yeon-kyung asked where he learned acupuncture. Hyo-im replied with an extremely arrogant expression, "I learned from my master, but I've long surpassed my master. Don't think that studying medicine in some underground facility a few months makes you a god doctor. But if I catch you treating anyone again, I'll hand you over to the police." After saying that, she handed him some medicine. It turns out his arm was injured from saving Ha-rae earlier. Goodness, now I understand why it hurts. Yeon-kyung reminded him to take the medicine correctly. Remember to go to the hospital tomorrow to change the bandage. Failure to handle it in time could cause an infection. Hyo-im stood in the middle of the street, feeling lost. I have to find a place to spend the night. Suddenly, he felt the urge to urinate, his legs trembling. At that moment, an elderly man walked out. The man shouted loudly, "What are you doing here?" But as he looked at the signboard, why did the name seem so familiar? He hastily asked the man he heard that it had closed down. Why was the name still here? An incident beyond imagination had sent this divine doctor to the modern era. Hyo-im sprang up from a river. Who were they? Where was this strange place? Clearly, this was not the world he knew. Hyo-im hurriedly ran up the bridge, looking at the familiar engraved characters on the stone. Indeed, this was where Hyo-im had fallen. But why did everything around him seem so strange? Relying on his memory, he decided to find his home from 500 years ago. But when he arrived, it had become a historical site. Only a stone board remained, and the same stone that he had diligently sharpened his needle. Now he wandered alone on the road. The most urgent task now was to find a place to spend the night. He saw the signboard of a nursing home. Thinking it was an inn, Hyo-im stepped in, and the voice-activated lights above lit up. This made him startled that he ran away. He then noticed that all one needed to do was press that iron piece to enter the house. He followed excitingly. Then he arrived at an apartment building which was brightly lit up. "Is anyone there?" he called out, but he was cursed by everyone there. He was promptly chased out by the security guard, and Hyo-im inadvertently noticed. Amencio. He told him he came from ancient times and now had not a penny in his pocket. He hoped the man could provide him shelter for the night, and out of pity, he agreed. Suddenly, Hyo-im's stomach growled loudly. The man handed him a plate of fried rice and said, "Lucky for you, Bachman doesn't bother with that." "Oh, does he live with someone else?" He even asked him to convey his thanks to Bachman and spoon some into his mouth. Delicious. Just thinking about Bachman saving some rice for him. "Thank you, Bachman. It's delicious." He took the medicine Yeon-kyung gave him, unsure how to take it properly. He popped it into his mouth and chewed it dry. The bitterness reached his brain. He searched for water and found an expired carton of milk on the table. As a result, the next day, he caught a diarrhea. Looks like the doctor's advice was right. Expired stuff shouldn't be consumed. Hyo-im ran out to the courtyard, saying hello to the old man. Seeing the adorable yellow dog, he wanted to pet it a few times. "Careful, or it might bite you." Hyo-im asked the old man what this dog's name was. "It's Bachman." "Bachman? Wow, what a ruggedly handsome name." He wanted to borrow some money from the staff at the medical center. The sap said he'd met many of his type before. Then he ushered Hyo-im out. Hyo-im turned and saw a bike by the road. He remembered seeing others ride these things before. Hyo-im didn't know how to pedal, so he sat on it and tried to move, swaying awkwardly. There was a slope ahead, so he took a deep breath and plunged down. Result? Wow, it was so fast. He ended up crashing straight into a small truck. That's how he successfully called an ambulance. Hyo-im lay sprawled on the stretcher, feeling dizzy. At that moment, the assistant suddenly had stomach pain and turned pale. Hyo-im intended to play dumb, "I'm the patient here," but upon seeing the painful expression on the assistant's face, he eventually had to treat him, so the roles of doctor and patient were reversed. Hyo-im treated the assistant, living up to his reputation as the best acupuncturist in the world. The two switched back to their proper roles. Hyo-im was pushed into the hospital, and suddenly an announcement came over the loudspeaker. Someone wanted to be treated by Dr. Yeon-kyung. The nurse said it was her boyfriend, who was specially arriving in an ambulance to find her. She pulled the curtain. This was the time traveler boyfriend. She took him outside to clean and bandage his wounds, and gave Hyo-im a first aid kit. "Cleaning your wound once a day, and come here in a week to stitch." She warned him not to come back here again. It turned out the video clip of Hyo-im saving Ha-rae had spread online. Since Hyo-im wasn't a doctor at the hospital, this inadvertently embarrassed the hospital's leadership. Suddenly, their patient was saved by some stranger. He decided to use the excuse of practicing without a license to send Hyo-im to jail. Due to the recent fall from the bike, Hyo-im's leg was bleeding, so he rushed to a place, pulled out the first aid kit, and prepared to bandage the wound. Just as he was struggling with how to use this modern equipment, the familiar figure caught his eye. It's Hare, about to escape from the hospital. Hare ran back to show him how to use the first aid kit. After bandaging the wound, they sat and talked for a while. Hyo-eum hurriedly fled when Young-kyung rushed out of the hospital to find Hare. This time, Young-kyung didn't pressure Hare into treatment, but gave her the choice. Hare agreed to let Young-kyung perform the surgery. With nowhere else to go, Hyo-eum lingered around the hospital. There's no way back for me. I guess I'll just have to live in this modern society. He looked up at the hospital building. Perhaps Young-kyung would introduce him to a job. Suddenly, an ambulance rushed in. It turned out there had been a series of car accidents. Hyo-eum thought of the situation. Previously, Young-kyung had fainted in a traffic accident. Worried about Young-kyung, he hurriedly rushed into the emergency room. Indeed, her mood at this moment was very bad. A sharp iron rod pierced deeply into the victim's body, narrowly hitting Young-kyung. Luckily, Hyo-eum managed to run over and shield her in time. When Hyo-eum regained consciousness, he found himself back 500 years ago, and Young-kyung was lying beside him, also transported back in time. Suddenly, Tiger appeared in the forest, and Hyo-eum pulled Young-kyung to run. The surroundings looked unfamiliar. Young-kyung asked where they were and why everyone was dressed in old-fashioned clothes. Could this be a Korean traditional village? I was just in the emergency room. Young-kyung recalled someone holding her on her back. Then she ended up in this strange place. I didn't do it on purpose, so I have already been kidnapped, right? Hyo-eum hurriedly explained that they had traveled back in time. Young-kyung remembered she still had to operate on Hare. She checked her watch, which had stopped. Also, there was no cell phone signal. She interrogated Hyo-eum about where they were. What is this place? This is Joseon. Hyo-eum said a Joseon dynasty 500 years ago. Of course, Young-kyung didn't believe it. She ran to an old man's place and asked, "Can I borrow your phone?" The old man looked puzzled when seeing Young-kyung's strange behavior. Hyo-eum came to help her. That man asked if she was his wife. Is there a problem with her brain? Poor guy. Young-kyung still couldn't believe it. If you still don't believe it, go and see for yourself. Hyo-eum walked away in annoyance. Young-kyung became the center of attention as soon as she stepped onto the street. The women here all wore long dresses. Her strangely made-up face attracted everyone's attention. The scene before her left her bewildered. She sat down on the ground dazedly. Am I crazy? At that moment, a soldier riding a horse approached. Just as the soldier was about to hit Young-kyung, Hyo-eum rushed to rescue her. In the words of today's youth, that was almost a traffic accident, but there are no ambulance here. It turns out Hyo-eum had just run into a house and changed clothes from head to toe. He even conveniently found a dress for Young-kyung. Hyo-eum helped Young-kyung put on the clothes, then took her away. Finally, Young-kyung believed Hyo-eum's words. She begged him to take her back, but for this matter, Hyo-eum didn't know what to do. Young-kyung was extremely frustrated. You've been through this twice already. Hyo-eum began to analyze his two cases of time travel. The first time was when he was shot with an arrow. The second time was when he was pierced by the iron rod. Could it be that my body is the key for time travel? Every time he encounters danger, he teleports. He dared not tell his thoughts to Young-kyung. What should I do if Young-kyung wants to bring something to stab me? Hyo-eum told her he had to go somewhere, suddenly teleporting to a familiar but strange place. She chased after Hyo-eum, saying she's willing to follow him. She told him to be responsible. Why should I do that? Because of you, I ended up here. You're responsible for taking good care of me and getting me back safely. Facing Young-kyung's persistence, Hyo-eum quickly softened. The scene before him left Hyo-eum wide-eyed. Could this be the love at first sight that people often talk about? Seeing Young-kyung wore her clothing incorrectly. Despite Hyo-eum's attempts to help several times, she still struggled, so he had to assist her. The two moved closer. Young-kyung was extremely embarrassed. Hyo-eum prepared to take her to his workplace when seeing his face drawn on wanted posters. This made him panic. They sneakily head to the traditional medicine clinic. Hyo-eum told her to wait outside. He needs to find his apprentice to understand the situation. He heard from his apprentice that after he disappeared, the streets were covered with wanted posters searching for him. However, with the Japanese invaders launching a war on Joseon, the court temporarily overlooked Hyo-eum. Someone suddenly fainted in front of the clinic. Hearing the cries for help, Young-kyung impatiently rushed out. She took out her stethoscope. After examining, she found the man has a chest congestion. She exposed the man's chest, then pulled out a scalpel to prepare for surgery. At this moment, a hand stops her. Are you kidding me? Did you forget that this is 500 years ago? Hyo-eum had to take over. He grabbed the man's wrist. He discovered the chest congestion is due to trapped air in the lungs. He needed to perform acupuncture immediately. First, he inserted needles at his knuckles and wrists. Then, he used a needle to insert in the chest, rotating it. Then, he removed the needle. Finally, patient was out of danger and breathed normally again. This scene leaves Young-kyung speechless, surrounded by applause. Hyo-eum can only smile. Afterward, he signaled for Young-kyung to sneak away. Hyo-eum was a wanted criminal hunted by the authorities. He took Young-kyung to an inn, asking the landlady to take care of her. He secretly went to pack his belongings. Maybe due to the unfamiliar environment, Young-kyung had a stomachache after the meal, so she asked the landlady where the restroom was. The landlady didn't know what a restroom was. We only have outhouses here, she says. It's over there. Young-kyung hesitated, but she had no way. Taking a deep breath, she lifted her skirt and stepped inside. After relieving herself, she was blocked by a few men. They pressured her to reveal Hyo-eum's whereabouts. This man was named Ju Cheol. His mother fell seriously ill not long ago. He rushed to beg Hyo-eum for help, hoping he could save his mother. But Hyo-eum not only refused to help, but also ran off to drink alcohol. Later, Ju Cheol's mother didn't overcome it, fueling his intense resentment. He swore to kill Hyo-eum himself to revenge for his mother. Seeing their threatening attitude, Young-kyung quickly climbed onto a table, grabbing a pepper spray from her bag. She sprayed crazily, then ran away from them. Meanwhile, Hyo-eum was joyfully counting his gold. At this moment, moment, Young Kyung followed the landlady's directions to find Hyo-im. Chu Cheol had also arrived. He accused Hyo-im of only treating the wealthy for personal gain, but when faced with the poor and suffering, he turned a blind eye. The reason his mother died was because Hyo-im refused to treat her. She passed away in resentment. Hearing this, Young Kyung looked at his treasure. Feeling upset at Hyo-im, Chu Cheol took revenge for his mother. He set fire to the house, and the flames grew larger. Young Kyung could only use her dress to put out fire while Hyo-im was only concerned about his money. Suddenly, Hyo-im saw the roof collapsing. Chu Cheol and his men rushed in, but Young Kyung and Hyo-im were nowhere to be found. Had they time traveled again? Young Kyung recognizes the familiar scene. She remembers a day she needs to perform surgery on Hare. She rushes to the hospital. Hyo-im tells her to definitely save that girl. Young Kyung imagines Hyo-im's greed for money and feels furious at him. Meanwhile, Hare is struggling with the doctors. She only wants Young Kyung to operate on her, despite resistance from the medical team to let her into the operating room. Hare refuses to let go. Finally, Young Kyung arrives just in time. She apologizes to Hare for her delay. Then Young Kyung prepares herself again, ready to perform surgery on Hare. But during the surgery, an unexpected event occurred. Hare's condition turned out to be more complicated than everyone's thought. Upon the senior surgeon's advice, Young Kyung paused the surgery to update the family on the urgent situation. If there were any unintended incidents during the operation, they wouldn't take responsibility. Young Kyung refused and decided to proceed with the surgery, enduring several hours. Finally, the surgery was successful. Meanwhile, Hyo-im was deeply hesitant to return home. He wanted to bring his dreams here, so he entered Traditonal Hospital Sin-yi. Seeing the doctors dressed in ancient attire, even using familiar items for medical purposes, surprised him. He noticed a doctor treating a patient with stiff joints. Curious, Hyo-im stepped forward. The doctor instructed the man to lie down. Upon hearing this, Hyo-im repositioned the patient and pointed to the acupuncture points. He pointed to the point below the spine and said, "Just needle here." Doctor asked who he was and why he was there. The assistant told the patient to listen to the doctor. This made the patient go mad. Hyo-im, realizing he had ruined others' work, quickly left. He headed to the reception desk. He asked how to become a doctor here as quickly as possible. The receptionist said that if he's skilled enough, the head of the institute would invite him to work. At that moment, Yu Jae-ha passed by. "Are you a traditional doctor?" Jae-ha explained that to work here, one must submit formal application. Since Hyo-im didn't understand, he decided to return to the old physician's house where he had stayed before. "I'm back, sir. Do you remember me?" The old man asked who he was. "My last name is Hyo, from Hyong." "My name is Im," he said, surprising the old man. Could this be the famous physician from the Joseon era? He wondered. Late at night, Young Kyung returned home, not wanting to wake her grandfather, so she went straight to her room. She lay on her bed without turning on the light. Suddenly, she noticed a man next to her. "Oh my, oh my." Young Kyung quickly turned on the light. She chased after Hyo-im. They argued. "Grandpa, did you let this man into our house? Are you her grandfather? How do you know her?" Hyo-im explained that the living room had too many mosquitoes, so he found a random room to sleep in. Little did he expect to bump into Young Kyung. She told him he had to leave her house by tomorrow morning. Hyo-im lay still on the floor, thinking about Young Kyung's words. "This world doesn't need doctors like you. No, someone like you shouldn't be a doctor." He ignores the suffering patients and only cares about money. As Grandpa said, he's just a greedy doctor. Hyo-im made up his mind. "Let's see. I will become a great doctor in this world. Even if you don't help, I will achieve my goal." He started sharpening his medical tools according to his plan. He's about to enter the field of medicine. Seeing Young Kyung getting ready for work, Hyo-im told her he would find a job and leave early. Next, he took out paper and pen. He wrote a job application like those in modern times. This made the elderly man beside him fed up. "Reputation and position? Don't think about leaving so easily. Pay 87,000 won if you want to leave. Otherwise, don't even think about it." Hyo-im held the job application confidently in his hand. He ran back to the chubby man to borrow money. The man remarked Hyo-im about last time being kicked out. Hyo-im felt bitter. He decided to walk to the hospital. At this moment, a group of elderly ladies approached, frightening him. They just come to seek medical treatment. One of them mistook Hyo-im for her lost son. Seeing Hyo-im as her son, she pointed at him and said, "Bonte, my dear, my son." In fact, she had dementia, so she had mistook him. She pointed at the pig on her arms and said, "Bonte, your brother is very sick. How can I suddenly become a veterinarian treating a pig?" Seeing the hopeful look in her eyes, Hyo-im could not do anything but immediately take on the role. "Mom, don't worry. I'll treat Bon-zik." After saying this, he awkwardly patted Bon-zik. After a while of examination, he knew Bon-zik was constipated, so Hyo-im took out a large acupuncture needle and inserted it straight down. Bon-zik immediately jumped up and ran around. Seeing the bright smile on her face, Hyo-im also felt amused. She handed Hyo-im a discount voucher and told him to buy something to eat. He thought this was money, so he immediately ran off, called a taxi to the hospital. When Hyo-im tried to leave, driver stopped him. "Money? Do you call this money?" Hyo-im realized he had been mistaken, so he quickly ran away. The taxi driver took out his phone to report to the police, but Young Kyung ran back to pay the taxi fare for Hyo-im. He pulled out his prepared application. The receptionist said he had to give it to the director, so he began to search through the corridors. Finally, he met the director in the restroom. Seeing the man grinning behind him, the director was terrified. Before he could calm down, Hyo-im eagerly rushed forward to bow. Both the director and Jae-ha were both shocked. Hyo-im handed out his handwritten resume. He expressed his desire to become a doctor here. He hoped the director could give him a chance. He confidently recounted his medical career in the Joseon era. From treating nobles to commoners, he was welcomed warmly to treat patients. At this moment, Young Kyung rushed in and covered his mouth, then dragged him outside. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Hyo-im didn't want to explain. Do you know what that money means to me? Before she could reply, Hyo-im walked away. Then, he walked past a glass man. Just one look was enough for him to foresee the man's life was in danger. Sure enough, moments later, the man fainted. Hyo-im hurried to check his pulse. Just as he was about to give acupuncture, Yun-kyung stopped him. Then another doctor rushed in to perform CPR. Soon after, medical staff brought a defibrillator. The man eventually regained consciousness. At this point, the director rushed over in order to arrest Hyo-im. Luckily, Yun-kyung distracted them, allowing Hyo-im to escape successfully. Hyo-im returned to the clinic to find the chubby. It turned out that in this world, practicing medicine without a license was considered illegal. Hyo-im also realized that Yun-kyung stopped him for his own good. Hyo-im asked the chubby how long it would take to obtain a medical license. Calculating 12 years of study plus university, it would take roughly 18 years. For the aptitude test, takes 12 years, so it'll be over a decade before to get a license. Hyo-im felt extremely frustrated. Seeing Hyo-im's lost look, Mr. Chun-sul led him to the subway station. Came here every week, provide free medical checkups for the needy. Suddenly, a man couldn't stand any longer. After checking his pulse, Hyo-im diagnosed the man with severe indigestion. Just as Mr. Chun-sul was about to give acupuncture, his hand began to shake uncontrollably. Hyo-im realized it was due to his age, so he grabbed Mr. Chun-sul's hand, and they silently understood each other. Hyo-im took the silver needle from Mr. Chun-sul's hand, and he nodded, giving him permission to proceed. Hyo-im checked the man's pulse and asked what he had eaten. He hadn't eaten anything, but he had drunk a lot last night. Hyo-im examined him and found his hands, feet, and abdomen were cold, indicating water poisoning. His heart rate was fast, and he felt dizzy. This made those around concerned. Can drinking water cause poisoning? Hyo-im explained, recalling cases he had treated before. Then he took out a big needle to treat the patient. He inserted and slowly rotated it. Hyo-im's treatment method was only heard of. After a while, patient regained consciousness, and everyone praised Hyo-im, calling him the savior of the poor. At this point, the police arrived, causing chaos. In the confusion, a beggar handed Hyo-im a bag, saying it was payment for his treatment. Hyo-im opened the bag, finding inside 2 corn cobs and 1 sweet potato. This reminded Hyo-im of how, back in Joseon, after treating the poor, they would bring food from home to thank him. Hyo-im understood that this was the most sincere expression of their gratitude. Though the manner differed, the essence of their gratitude was the same. As long as you find joy in their recovery, you're a good doctor. Mr. Chun-sul's words of wisdom touched Hyo-im's heart. Back at the clinic, Hyo-im met Yun-kyung, who was temporarily suspended from duty for letting Hyo-im leave. Seeing her folding clothes, he assumed she had been fired. Hyo-im apologized for misunderstanding Yun-kyung before, and thanked her for stopping him in time for not being arrested in prison. Yun-kyung agreed to let him stay at their house. Alright, that's the end of part 1. See you in part 2 tomorrow. Remember to subscribe to the channel to keep up. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next videos. See you again in the next videos.